on any model like this, especially this complicated, take your time. The instructions are extremely well laid out. Weston has gone to the effort of explaining how a steam engine works, what the point of it is, what it actually does. Instructions are extremely well detailed, very important to follow them. Everything is laid out, section by section. It's a full list of parts. As I said to you, there's I think I said 132 parts in total, at least that I count. And then in their instructions they give extremely good blow-ups of plans, elevations, some sections, and then every single component is drawn and it follows the steps that are actually written, so that you can find the pieces very easily. All these tiny pieces here, this is this one here, for example, is 1/16 by 1/16. It tells you where it goes all the way through here. Instructions are extremely well laid out, very easy to follow. All you have to do is take your time. As you can see, everything is laid out. If you rush it, you're going to make a mistake, and you're not going to be very happy with the results. There's a full elevation, blown up, larger than the model, so that the parts are easily seen. Everyone is coded, so you can find the part based on the parts list. And same as the end elevation, you can see what's happening on the end. There's the plan of it, looking down where all the parts are. There's the wheel, the flywheel here, that the belt will run off of, the twin cylinders each side, the governor that's on the top here, which you can see here. A lot of parts in here. Remember, 130 odd parts. So it's very, very important to follow instructions. Take your time, and you're going to have a beautiful engine when it's done. In this case, it's an old engine. It's working hard. A lot of it is in the weather, so I'm going to be doing a lot of weathering on this. So it's not going to be a pristine engine that's maintained as if it might be, say, inside the stamp mill, somewhere where it's out of the weather. This is, this is an engine that is working hard and has seen a lot of years in bad weather. Equally so with Sierra West, an excellent set of instructions. Much the same format, blow-ups, photographs, concise instructions, easy to follow, step by step, everything numbered and identified on the drawings as well. Good illustrations all the way through. A lot of information, and finally they give you a lot of the layouts for the timber, and finally some additional blow-ups and a general layout of the equipment that would be inside the building. Log hole coming in, log deck, log turner, the husk, live rolls, dead rolls, log carriage. This is what would pass through the sawmill. Drive shaft over here, mill engine and boiler would be located somewhere over here. That would drive the line shafts that would operate all this equipment. Carriage drive and sawdust blower out this side, where the sawdust can be removed. Excellent set of instructions. I find the sanding disc a very helpful tool, and I use this a great deal. So first of all, make sure that your bed is square to the disc. And these castings, while they're fairly good and fairly true, you still end up with a parting seam around the center, and you've got to get that square. So the first thing I do is I flatten these two faces first. I just lightly touch that as it's spinning. It takes all the chaff off the side here. Do the same on the other side. Now I have a nice flat surface. And then with the downside, as that's spinning, I slowly rotate the flywheel until I get all the casting center lines all off of the side here. And once that's done, I then take and start filing that true. The best castings that I've ever found in any kits were Charlie Brahma castings. There virtually was no flashing, almost no center ridge from the two halves of the casting, but these are really quite amazing as well. And so what I've done is, after I've ground that and got a nice flat surface across here, I then take a lathe file, and a lathe file has very shallow teeth, just subtle, a gentle angle on the side, and then I use the lathe file to take all the grinding marks out that were from the grinding wheel and the disc, and you get almost all the tool marks out. Now you have to remember that these surfaces on the flywheel will be polished because of the belt that's running all the time. Once that's done, you can still true it up with any small file if you wish, but I like the lathe file because the lathe file, that's exactly what it's designed to do, is create a very smooth surface. Once that's done, then I take 6-0 steel wool, and then I polish that. And this white metal is extremely good. It's a fairly hard white metal, and it will never rust, of course. So by polishing this with the steel wool, you take out almost all the tool, because this is cutting, but it's cutting very, very fine, and it takes out all the very fine tool marks from the files. And then I'll just take the corner of it and I'll just run it around these edges here, just to break that sharp edge on the corner. And once that's done, and we're pretty much ready for paint. And then we paint this. Once this is painted here and on the edge, then I will use the steel wool again just to rub the edge, and that'll take the paint off all these sides. And you can see we have a really nice polished edge here now that will be a nice contrast to all the other surfaces that will be painted and weathered and represent that working surface. The pulleys will be done exactly the same way. A lot of filing, cleaning up, painting, and then polishing the surfaces wherever the belts run. As I said earlier, almost all the pieces will be filed and trued up to get rid of the flashing from the parting lines. So again, I'll still use this lathe file because it's designed to make very smooth cuts. And all the areas that are supposed to be flat, I'll just run it, and I'll take all the edges off and make a true flat edge on the ends of the cylinders. And this would apply to probably any area that's a bearing surface. The cylinders like so, the flat bed here, the end of the cylinder. I'll file that. I'll file the bottom side. That'll take the highlights off, and the same as the bed for the cylinder. The bottom side, just so that it'll sit on this casting true when it's glued down. The same as by creating a flat surface here, we end up also with a nice flat bearing on there. Flat here, so when the cylinders go on, they have a very true surface here to keep it in line and absolutely flat. The edges here then are done with a needle file. There's a variety of needle files, so I'll take and I'll true up any little other edges in here, back inside here, down the sides. I'll use a round file, and I'll do the ported areas in here where the cylinders go. The cylinders are cleaned, and then the pistons, the same thing. Here's a piston, for example, and I want to be sure that the piston fits in here nice and smoothly. It's filed, takes all the burrs off, all the flashing, the parting lines, so that I make sure that it's nice and smooth and it'll fit right through here. And then we'll move on to the next step, which will be doing all the back edges of the cylinder heads and caps so that they all fit nice and tight and snug, so when those little details are on here, the nut and bolt castings all show up, you don't get any big gaps in the side here. I'll take a file and I'll file the edges here, because there's still a parting line even on that small edge here. It's a two-part casting, so just by taking a flat needle file, I'll just run this on the edge, and I'll take that little edge off so it's nice and smooth all the way around again, so this all fits together. The cap goes in, you know, fit nicely on the end here. It'll mount on here nice and flat, and then once that's all done, we can paint all these pieces. Now these other small items like this are fairly flash free because they've been really nicely done, nicely cast. These are going to be very hard to do any filing, but you have to check them just in case there's any flash on them. But they almost all appear to be flash free, so we're very fortunate that way because these castings are very good. And the same thing on all the parts. Once we've done all that, then we'll check the instructions and we'll start drilling the holes for the various parts so they can go on axles and using pins. And that's the next step. Once the filing's done, pre-paint everything, and then we can start assembling. Now what I do is I take all the bits and pieces that really aren't going to be painted, and I will put some black in it in a small dish like this. Don't put a lot in because you'll end up wasting it. And I'll usually drop all the parts in here, and these are all very tiny parts, so got to be very careful not to lose any, because as you can see, that's how tiny they are. And so I'll drop those in each of the groups that we laid out originally. Be careful not to lose any. And then I'll take a brush and just you can see the black in it working, and I'll usually brush these so that get rid of any air pockets that might be on on some of the castings, especially ones with like these particular ones here that are oil cans here, and brush them around to get completely covered with the black in it, and just let it sit for a minute or two. Just be very careful that nothing comes out with the brush. And then I usually keep a bowl of clean water beside it and sit it on a paper towel. And then when these pieces here, as you can see, they're starting to get black, and I'll sort of push it to one side and then gently draw this back, and the pieces are all up on the side. And then I'll take these one by one and I'll drop them into the clean water, and what that does is neutralizes the action of the black in it. And there'll be different degrees of blackening depending on how long it's been in the black in it, and so on. We'll just keep taking all those out. Now that I've dropped these into the water to basically neutralize it, after a couple of minutes, just flush it around, and then I'll just take these, and you can use your fingers, you don't have to use tweezers, sometimes it's easier, and I'll just drop those on the paper towel so they can dry. Easy to see all the parts too, and we counted them before in the groups when we laid these out, so it's an opportunity just to recount each of these parts on the paper towel, just to make sure that we've got all the bits and pieces. There's one stuck to my finger there, shows you how small they are. And keeping this, the water, fresh water each time, helps you to sort of see that you've got all the bits and pieces that were in there.